This is Hebrew Hits presented by jtriberadio.com. I'm your host, Malya, and I sit down with people who live by the motto, it's what you do with what you have that makes a difference. Welcome to the 38th episode of Hebrew Hits. I'm your host, Malya, and today I have the pleasure of sitting down with Yonah Weiss. He's actually on a Zoom call with me right now because he's in Israel. We are going to get to that all right when we start the episode. But first, I want to please ask you if you can go follow Hebrew Hits Radio on YouTube. Please subscribe and follow Hebrew Hits on all socials at Hebrew_Hits. And please subscribe to Hebrew Hits on all your favorite streaming apps. We are available on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, all of them. Go give us a follow. Right now, I have Cost Segregation Expert Yonah Weiss with me. How are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty well. Thanks so much for having me on the show.
So I know that when we were talking, on the phone, you were saying how you were brought up, you were in California, now you live in Israel. So tell us a little bit about your background.
It's been a really interesting journey. I mean, to tell you the truth, it's been a long one, but yeah, as you mentioned, I grew up in Southern California, Los Angeles, and went to college, San Diego State University, and decided basically early on that I really wanted to go to Israel. I'd never been to Israel, and so it was part of my dream, and I wanted to go literally right after high school. Didn't work out. I ended up going my junior year, taking a junior year abroad and spending that there. I ended up, studying yeshiva most of the time, but also getting a couple days a week for a couple hours, getting some credits at Hebrew University. So I was able to, with that, finish my college degree when I went back for a year to San Diego. But as soon as I entered the country, literally as soon as I stepped foot in Israel, I just fell in love, and I decided pretty soon thereafter that I just wanted to stay, and I didn't want to go back to finish that year of college, which I ended up doing, but ended up getting right back on the plane literally as soon as I graduated. I didn't even go to graduation, by the way. So it was just like I had fallen in love with the place, with the people, with the heritage that I loved. So I found it my home, and it's still here 20 years later.
Well, did you know about going to Israel, going to yeshiva when you were growing up? Because if it was already in the household, it would be normal. Okay, you want to go to Israel. But was it talked about when you were growing up?
No, it wasn't talked about really much at all. And I had a little bit of, I wouldn't say a fight per se, but it didn't come easy. Let's just put it that way. I was kind of on my own in that decision. And so in that regard, it was a little difficult, but I felt like, many of our forefathers who had gone on journeys, going like Avram Avinu going across the ocean, going across the river, right? He was on the other side. The whole world was against him, and he went and did what he knew was right, what he felt was right, and that I kind of felt like I had my forebears to that decision.
That's so interesting that you thought of it all on your own. You're saying that none of your friends went to Israel either. It was really, you just thought of it from learning the Torah and from understanding that our forefathers went to Israel. You wanted to go.
No, I wouldn't make it that broad. There, I definitely knew people who went, but it wasn't something in my household that was, that no one else in my family had done, and it wasn't like something that was pushed that this is something you should be doing. So that's all. I definitely knew people who went, and knew people who spoke about how great it was, which is why I wanted to go as well.
So you went to Israel? I'm just trying to get, the whole picture. You went to Israel. Did you come back for like a few months, or did you stay there once you went? You didn't come back to America?
No, I actually came back for almost an entire year to finish the last year of college, even though I really didn't want to, because I didn't really enjoy college so much. I didn't really feel like it was anything that was pushing me to get a career or anything like that. I didn't have a drive for that at the time. And so, but I did feel like it was something that I had to do, something that I should do. And I decided that, I made a commitment to finish. I started something, made a commitment to finish, and I ended up doing it in great style, believe it or not. I mean,
what do you mean?
What I mean is that I literally just put it out there that, hey, I'm going to do it. I'm going to go back, but because I fell in love with the learning of Torah, and in living in Israel, I literally felt like I was going to go back as soon as I graduated. So I put it in my mind that really I'm just going to continue what I started back in San Diego, whether or not the place is the same. I'm just going to say, people ask me, where am I from? I'm going to say I'm from Yerushalayim. I'm from Israel, right? Already when I was living there, and I set up chavrusas there. I ended up working for the Torah high school of San Diego, living in the dorm as a dorm counselor in that final year of college. Ended up going to classes just like a couple times a week. Ended up making up my own classes where I would learn and I'd write like a paper on some Torah subject, which was very cool because I had some flexibility in doing that. But one thing that I found was that I didn't even know that something like that existed, that you can actually make up your own classes and get your own credits as long as you find a professor that's willing to sign off on it. So I did what I think a lot of people should do if find yourself in that situation. Reach out, find a professor, find someone that is personable, someone that you can relate to, and just pitch the idea. And for me, that's what I did. I really pitched the idea to like 3 different professors, and they all bought into it. And so I literally was able to get credits for classes that for doing basically whatever I wanted to do.
That's a very big change to happen right after high school. How old were you? You were 18, you were 19, 20. How old were you when you went to Israel?
20. So yeah, 2 years, third year of college.
Wow. So how was that transition for you? You're so used to the American lifestyle. Like even in America, the streets are even paved. Like it's so different. Everything is so different. It's so different. How was that transition for you when you went from America and you went to Israel?
Well, you're absolutely right that it's different. It's a different culture, especially I was living in Yerushalayim. I was living in the old city for a little while. And so it's a totally different environment, different culture. But I didn't grow up with like this huge, this mindset of, loving the material world. My family, we were pretty frugal, comfortable, I'd say upper middle class, whatever grew up. But I didn't have the things, just everything at my fingertips. I had to work. So I had a work ethic. Already in high school, I had to, have several different jobs so I could pay for whatever I wanted to. If I wanted extracurricular stuff or wanted to, to buy myself things. So there wasn't this idea that, the life of luxury and, material existence is really what it's all about, which I think a lot of people in America and the Western culture in general are addicted to. This comfort and this, I don't want to put anyone down, but decadence of just living in the material world. And so for me, the spiritual pursuit of just living in a place and not even thinking about how it was almost like, in certain senses, like a third world country. It's a very advanced country in a lot of senses, but on the other side of the coin, you go to Mea Shearim and things like that, where people live like you can't tell besides, if they pull out their, their cell phone, whatever, but you can't tell that this place has been transported back 100 years or not, because the people live like as if it were.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's so interesting because I'm from America and I didn't realize how much I have and how much, it's accessible for me in America until I went to Israel. When I went to seminary, I was like, wow, I live in America. It's such a difference. Even if people are, not living a luxury lifestyle, you still have so much more here in America. So I want to ask you this question. I know that you can't say you don't miss anything about America. Come on, you can't. Like if I would go to Israel right now, I would need my holy schnitzel. It's down the block for me right here in Cedarhurst. The sandwiches are so amazing. The sauces are great. There's perfect parking. In Israel, you have to take a bus. And holy schnitzel, the sandwich is just like delicious. They put such good stuff in it. So that's what I would miss. Don't tell me there's nothing that you miss from America. Come on.
There's certainly things that, I miss. You can miss things, wherever you go in life. But it's really about the decisions you're making and the, places you're going and being totally in love with where you are and what you're doing and the people you're with at the time. And so, yeah, I'm sure there are things I miss. I mean,
so what is it? A chocolate bar, like the cars? What do you miss?
Oh yeah, I definitely miss traffic. Yeah, it's a big thing. No, I don't know. You can't really get American style pizza in Israel. It's just
that is very true.
It's different. It's a totally different thing. So if I were to mention, one thing, I don't know. Maybe that would be it. Maybe it would be customer service. It's very hard to get customer service in Israel. It's just a different culture. But you get used to it. You just get used to it. And I think if you want to survive, you want to succeed in a different place, you have to get used to the different culture. You can't think like, oh, I'm just
Right.
gonna get here exactly what I had somewhere else. No, you have to sacrifice, and I think that's an important thing.
Was the language a difficulty for you?
Not really. I actually, when I was in college, I grew up with some Hebrew, but in college, I actually took, because I knew I wanted to go to Israel as soon as, like I said, right after high school. It didn't end up happening for a couple of years, but I ended up
Mhm.
taking classes in university for that purpose. So I took Hebrews. I took 2 years of Hebrew. So my Hebrew was pretty proficient in terms of speaking. I had some friends that I spoke with, and you just immerse yourself. You get involved with it. I'm pretty good with languages, picked up pretty quickly. And so therefore, it wasn't that big of a barrier for me.
That's good. And do you ever feel like homesick for your family, for America when you're in Israel? Or are you completely, you would say you're an Israeli 100%?
Well, I think they're two completely different statements there. So I'm not going to agree to both of them. I don't consider myself an Israeli by any standards, although my kids are pretty Israeli, that's for sure. And it's really hard to get around that. But but no, not really homesick. I mean, I consider this my home. Like I live here. I love it here.
Right.
I work remotely, so I work in America, and so I'm dealing with Americans all day long, every day.
Mm.
English is really my primary speaking language, although for many years, Yiddish was my primary spoken language. And so I didn't have, English was kind of hard for me to get back into to speak regularly. And Hebrew for a couple of years also, I was speaking Hebrew fluently, and that was my, first language. So it's just a combination. It's really about where your environment is, and I
Mhm.
totally have seen that, how based on where your environment is and who you're speaking to, who you're hanging around with, that's going to influence you and is going to have an effect on you.
For sure. Now let's talk a little bit about your parents and your family. How did they feel when you were 20 years old and decided, okay, I want to pick up and I want to go to Israel?
Well, they've always been very supportive of, myself and my siblings to do what we want to do, and make, kind of put us in that role of having our own independence. And part of that had to do with having us get jobs when we were in high school so that we could pay for our own things, and they're paying
Mhm.
for college as well. And so there was a lot of independence stressed in that regard. And so they totally supported my decision in that regard. Like, they respected that, but at the same time, they didn't, they wanted me to stay. They wanted me to so there was that kind of a kind of rift that was created when I did go, and basically said, well, I'm going, I'm never coming back.
Wow.
It wasn't personal. It wasn't like, I'm leaving you guys, whatever, but it was just like, hey, this is where I feel like I need to go. This is my life. This is where I want to see where it takes me. And I think they were very supportive of that to a
And
certain
how are they
extent,
feeling? Right.
although at the same time, and I think, continually, they're still wanted me to be there. They didn't support necessarily support me in terms of financially, definitely, but didn't support that. They had their own ideas for me, and I
Mhm.
think it's really important for kids not to disrespect your parents or go against their wishes, but to realize that you have your own life, and you have to make decisions that are going to be best for you, even if they're go contrary to what your parents might think.
If you don't mind me asking, what did your parents want for you?
Um, I don't think they wanted anything specific. It was just they felt like going to a foreign land and just like never coming back. Although I did come back, obviously, but being extreme there, but was, especially like I wasn't going to get a job. I wasn't going to, they always had concerns of how I'm going to support my family, how I'm going to do
Mhm.
this and that. So I think that was it as well.
And how are they feeling about it today?
They kind of got used to the fact, although they
Mhm.
still, they still have that kind of grudge, like, oh, you could live here also, you could be here.
But you still talk to them and you're
Sure,
still
of
close
course.
with them. And how do you communicate, like through Zoom, or have you, well, this is actually what I want to ask you. And then we're going to move on to what you do. But I love this background. This story is incredible. How you just like picked up and left and started a life. It's showing everybody how important it is to live for you and find what you actually really want to do and like go for it. So when was the last time you've actually been in America?
Um, so with the recent job that I have, the past few years, I travel every other month basically. So with COVID
Oh,
happening, I didn't travel that much, but I was there. Now we're in November. The last trip I was in March. So really right before the travel bans came in. I was in LA in January, where my parents live. So that's the last time I saw them.
oh, so you're here all the time. I thought you like left and didn't come back for 20
Well,
years.
there was basically, I mean, there to a certain extent, I did go and ended up, we didn't really get to the full extent of the story, but for about 14 years or so, I totally
Mhm.
immersed myself in Torah, in learning, and I did travel. I went back maybe twice during that time.
Wow. So from when
The
you
past,
left for
like,
14 years.
yeah, basically like Yaakov Avinu, he went to Beis Shem Ve'aver for 14 years, and stood, and studied there and totally immersed. That's kind of how I felt like I was doing.
Right. So talking about you going to Israel, you decided to go to learn and you said, okay, I'm going to learn. And you're saying now that you learned for 14 years. What made you decide, okay, I'm going to start working? And how did you get into real estate and start working for Madison if you were learning literally straight for 14 years?
Absolutely. That's a great question. And I didn't have that decision at the right at the beginning when I started learning, just, oh, I'm going to do this. I'm going to spend 14 years doing this.
Mhm.
It was kind of a gradual decision, a gradual process of just, oh, I love doing this. I'm enjoying it. I'm in Colo. I'm learning. I don't see a foreseeable, future. I'm going to get a job. Maybe, I learned how to be a sofer for a while. I was doing that a little, I was a tutor. I was getting getting some side jobs, basically getting paid. But at a certain point, a lot of people go to, and this is a kind of a funny thing I like to say is that a lot of people like to make that joke that, oh, they go to learn in Israel, and then when the money runs out, right, then they have to go get a job. So that's how a lot of people approach it. So for me, the money ran out, and then, like, 10 years later, I decided to get a job. But that's no. So, but to be with joking aside, I didn't really see any other lifestyle. I loved what I was doing. Yeah, it's
Mhm.
very difficult. There was definitely went into debt having to live there in the lifestyle that I wanted to, which I wouldn't recommend for everyone. But I, I love what I was doing. I was teaching, I was learning, and raising a family. There came a certain point where I actually had a personal family health crisis, I would say,
Mhm.
which kind of forced me out of my comfort zone and forced me to see, kind of take a step back, reevaluate things, and say, okay, this is not going the same direction that I could have. I didn't have, the access to money that I needed at the time
Mhm.
to do what we needed to do. And I said, listen, I need to take a little more responsibility. I need to take a little more accountability for myself and my family, and just decide, okay, let's see what's out there. I'm open to opportunities, and I think a lot of my mindset from for all my life has just been just go with the flow, like see what happens. I don't have like a 10-year plan. I don't have a 5-year plan. I have let's go with the flow. Let's see where opportunities come. Let's see where call it hashgacha pratis, the divine providence.
Mhm.
Where is Hashem leading me? And that's exactly what I did. I said, listen, put it out there to Hashem, put out some davening, some tefillas, saying, what does Hashem want from me right now? And I saw, yeah, I needed to find a job and find something that was going to bring in more income to my family. That uh, that happened literally. I just started putting it out there to a few different people, saying, some friends, hey, by the way, I'm doing this now. I'm looking for something. What do you have? Any ideas? Anything? And I did a lot of introspection at that time. And one thing that I came to was I decided, okay, I'm not going to go back to school, any formal education. I didn't
Right.
like college or anything like that to the degree. And I decided, okay, so I need to find some sort of field that does not require any formal education. I learn on the field, much better.
Mhm.
I learn apprenticing, hanging out with people, doing that kind of thing. And the second thing I decided was, okay, so now of the possibilities that are out there in the world, that I don't have to have any formal education, what industry or what field has the maximum potential of income out there,
Wow.
right? Because if I'm going to do something, I may as well do something with a huge potential of opportunity. Hashem's endless, and so that's what. So real estate was basically that was the answer. And I spoke to a few people, and that was kind of the direction I was put in. And then I saw, like I said, I put it out there to a few friends. An opportunity came my way. A friend of mine was, he said, "Hey, he'd been working in commercial mortgages for a number of years, and he started doing his own thing. And he's like, why don't you come work with me? Why don't you do something? We'll work together. I'll show you the ropes. I'll teach you about commercial real estate." And that's basically what I did. So long story short, from that point on, I just was open up to the world of real estate. Very quickly
Wow.
got connected with a lot of very influential people, and just enjoyed doing it. I got my real estate broker's license in Israel, and so I started working on the residential side just to see, hey, what is there here? Did that for a couple of years, about close to 2 years. Didn't like it so much. Saw some success, but was not. I just didn't like the cultural the cultural interactions that was with Israelis. And I said, I relate much more to Americans. And so let's find something that's going to be a kind of remote working. I know people do it all over the world. They work remotely. So I found this company, Madison, amazing company, Madison Title, Madison Commercial Real Estate. A lot of people know of them, especially in the tri-state area.
Mm-hmm.
And literally, I spoke to a friend of mine in real estate for years and years, at least 10, 15 years. And he said, "Oh, Madison, they're the tzaddikim of real estate."
Wow.
That's what his words were. I'm like, "Oh, listen, that sounds like a good fit." I don't know.
It's a Jewish company?
Yeah, it's a Jewish
Okay.
company. They're from the owners of the company, the principals. And so I was like, okay, sounds like a perfect fit. and that's got a job working with them, and the rest is history, basically.
Was it hard to get a job with them since you didn't go to college? I mean, you said you don't need it for real estate, but how was that process of getting a job after saying that you learned for 14 years and then you're starting? Like, did they ask questions? How did they feel?
Well, since I had spent, before I started with them, I'd spent the last couple of, 2, 3 years almost in the real estate, doing commercial mortgages for a little while, and then doing the residential brokerage. So I had a background in real estate. People nowadays don't really hire based on college education. I think
Sure.
it's a little overrated at this point, unless you're going for something very specific that you need the skills that a college degree will get you. I think it's very overrated, getting a college degree. That's just my personal opinion. So if you have something, what you're doing, definitely, it's something you need to get a graduate degree, because you know exactly what you want to do.
Right.
But since I found, and I'm 40 years old, I've been around the block a little bit. I've spoken to a lot of people, my peers, people my age. A lot of people, believe it or not, do not do anything that has to do with their college degree. I'd say
actually very true.
the vast majority of people. I did a very interesting, and I use LinkedIn a lot for my kind of social experiments. And I put a post out there a while back, a year or two ago. It was just like, my degree is in blank, and now I work in blank. And I had like hundreds of responses. It went viral. It was like 100,000 views or whatever.
Wow.
Like hundreds of responses, and the vast majority of them were totally like, I got my degree in, finance, and now I work in, agricultural, whatever, like totally different.
Wow.
Of course, there are people. I got my degree in accounting, and I'm an accountant. Of course, there are people like that. But like, what I'm saying is, unless this is what your passion is, this is what you want to do, don't think that you have to go to college, right, to be successful.
I tell people, go to college because you find out who you are and you find out what you love. There's so many, if you don't try so many things, you're not going to know what you love. You have to try it out first. So let's talk about what cost segregation actually is. Our listeners may not know what that is. So what is cost segregation?
So cost segregation is a weird name, but basically what it means is, take a step back. It's a service that our company provides for real estate owners that allows them to get huge income tax deductions, huge income tax benefits. So that's the background of what it is. What it specifically is has to do with properties get a tax deduction from the government, IRS, called depreciation. Depreciation is a deduction you get based on the fact that you bought a building. What we do is something called accelerating that depreciation. We can take, by segregating the cost of your building, that's what it means, into different categories that things depreciate on faster rates. You can take big tax deductions in the first year or first 5 years instead of having to spread it out over a very long period of time. So in a nutshell, without getting into the gory details, that's what cost segregation is.
Now I have this question for you because I was, learning about cost segregation because I'm interviewing you, and I wasn't sure if somebody owns a house, because you're saying property owners, is that considered, or is it only if you own, let's say, a building in, let's say, Manhattan or wherever the building is? But because I know that a house is not a primary asset, right? It's not considered an asset. So could you help out with somebody who owns a house?
So if it's your own personal residence, the answer is no.
Right. Okay.
So the depreciation deduction the government gives is for rental property or business property. And so if it's your personal residence, you don't get that. You can't benefit from this. But if you own a house that's a rental property, you could. If you have a short-term rental or long-term rental, any type of property, doesn't have to be commercial, doesn't have to be a building, doesn't have to be in Manhattan. It could be,
anywhere. So why does the government do that? Because maybe the government would think like, oh, we're giving you so much off your taxes right away. What is in it for them? Because there's always something in it for the government.
There is always something in it for the government. I think if you study, if one were to, I'm not saying you should do this, but if one were to study taxes and how they work in anywhere in the world, any country in the world, you'll find that it's really an incentive program. That's what taxes are. The first 10 pages of the tax code are the different, tax rates that everyone has to pay. The rest of it, the rest of, 725 pages of it is all different ways that you can get deductions, different ways that businesses can benefit, et cetera. Basically, the point being is that taxes are not there so that people have to pay taxes per se. They're a system in place for people who are smart, right, to take advantage of all the deductions, all of the incentives that the government puts in place. So when you study any tax law, you'll find that there are certain incentives that are put there because they're contributing to the economy, right? They want to tax businesses. They want to tax people that make more money because, they're contributing to the economy more, right, by making more money. So they want to tax them, but they also give business deductions for the same people. So there's a whole give and take. So again, real estate, when you study that, you realize that real estate, property specifically, is a huge contribution to the economy. People need a place to live, for example. So, and businesses need a place to operate. And when you put all that together and you see that this is such an integral and essential part of the economy, then the fact that the government is giving these deductions to incentivize people to, to buy buildings, to buy property, then it makes a lot of sense.
Right. So hearing you speak, it just makes me think that maybe you recommend people not owning an actual house. If you have a house, maybe rent it and put money into real estate where you could actually make more money from.
That's it's a great conversation. It's a great topic. I know there's a lot of debate about this, whether you should own your own house, whether, your personal residence is considered an asset or a liability. Without going down that rabbit hole, there definitely is, there's a lot to be said about owning your own house. Okay. There's also a lot to be said by having your money make money for you. Okay. And the wealthy people, when you study the wealthy people in the world, they don't have one stream of income. Mostly people have multiple streams of income, which means that if any one thing were to stop, they still can survive, right? And they still can thrive because they have income, they have money coming in from multiple sources. So to have your own personal residence, you're putting money into that, right? You're making money from wherever and then just putting money into the ground, basically, right? Paying off your mortgage, just putting it into the ground. Whereas if you rented a place, yes, you're renting, you're also putting that money into the ground. But if you had money that would be enough to buy a house and invested a portion of that, You could have that money be making money for you. And, the income from that could actually go to pay your rent
Right.
and beyond that. So
Right.
there's definitely one great example of that, and where you could actually do both is something that in the industry is called house hacking. So you can Google that, house hacking. But
Okay.
what it means is basically if you live in a multiple unit house, you buy a multiple unit house, like let's say a duplex, right? Or a
Hmm.
threeplex, 3-story, and you live in one unit and you rent out the other units. So what you end up doing is you can take a mortgage out. It's your personal residence, and you can get a loan because loans for your personal residence are much more favorable. I mean, you could literally buy a house with 5% down or 3.5%
Wow.
down with the FHA loan, which for commercial, for business or rental properties, you can't do that. Maybe 30% down, 20% down at best. But when you're buying your own house, you can actually have a mortgage and have the renters in your other unit pay off the mortgage. So you're actually having your place and you get both best of both worlds. So you can actually live in your own house and also
Hmm.
have those renters that are paying off the mortgage because the income coming in from that.
And then you could get that also the cost segregation from the government with the taxes because it's as if you
It's
invested
a
in the real estate.
Yeah, it's a rental property at the same time.
Wow, that's so cool. So let me ask you this question. I know that you were learning for 14 years and now you're doing this. How has your lifestyle changed?
My lifestyle, in terms of quality of life or anything like that, is changed very little, if to none.
Wow.
Because we live very frugally. I think I don't have any fancy things, right? I don't own a car. I mean, usually we don't really need to own a car, right? But I don't own any fancy things like no watches or anything. Like I don't care about that stuff, right?
Hmm.
What I care about is providing for my family. And that's number one. And that has always been number one. And so if I can make enough money to give them what they need, what they want, that to me, I'm satisfied. If I have more money, then I can now use that and invest that and have, be able to provide for my kids when they grow up. That's
Hmm.
even better. And so that's really what it's all about.
Wow, so incredible. Let me ask you this. The mantra of Hebrew Hits is it's what you do with what you have that makes a difference. How would you say that this mantra applies to your life?
I think I've been blessed with a couple of things, and everyone needs to look inside themselves and see what are the
Mhm.
skills, what are the talents that you have, and don't try to hide them. Don't try to think oh, I'm too humble to admit what those talents are, because humility is not saying, oh, I'm nothing and I don't have any talents or anything like that. Humility is seeing how great you are, but
Mhm.
realizing that number one, it's all from Hashem. It's not from you. Okay,
Right.
so that's number one part of humility. The second part of humility is realizing that as great as I may be in all these gifts that I've been given, it's nothing compared to what my potential is. And so I think of those skills, or what I have and what I'm doing with that, number one is that I believe I have a very good ability to, because my background is in learning and in teaching. I love to teach. And so one of the things that I've kind of been blessed with is that ability in public speaking and teaching. So I love that. So I'm doing with that in a different
Mhm.
sense. I try to do it, in everything that I do, but just to help other people and to teach other people, uh, to try to get ahead of where they're at now. That's number one. Number two would be, and it kind of goes together with that, but I've always had this really innate sense of giving, right?
Wow.
The whether I was born, my birthday is on the second day of Pesach. So for anyone listening who knows about the sphere of Omer, you know that there's different attributes. And without getting into Kabbalah or anything like that, the second day of Pesach is called Chesed Sheba Chesed. So it's
Mhm.
the giving of the giving. It's like the ultimate giver, right? That was Avram
Wow.
Avinu, and so that I feel like that has something to do with my life's mission. And
Mhm.
so how much I can give, how much I can help other people, contribute, give back, and so that's why I think I do a lot of what I do.
Now that you're saying that you're such a giver, and I really do believe it has something to do with when you're born, especially chesed sheba chesed. Can you share one or two stories where you knew if you give to this person, there's no way you're getting back, but anything from this person, you still gave? And how did it make you feel after giving to this person with knowing you're not getting anything back in return?
Well, I think one of the like the Rambam lists the different forms of charity, different forms of stuff. And the highest form is to give to someone in a way that you're actually teaching them. You're teaching them, or you're giving them a profession. You're teaching them, right? Like, there's old famous, they say this from the Rambam, they say it's a Chinese, thing that if you give a man a fish, he'll eat for a day. But if you teach a man to fish, he'll eat for a lifetime. I think it's really the same idea, the same concept, whether it's from the Rambam or from the Chinese. But for me to help other people get jobs, and so for example, LinkedIn has become this incredible networking place for me that I can just literally help people on a whim, like no idea. Like someone just messaged me today, like, oh, can you help me my post over here? Someone I'm hiring, I'm looking for someone. Do you know anyone that's looking? So I just like tag a bunch of people that I think would be able to, specifically that I think will be able to live in her city. If someone gets a job from that, that's great. And I've seen that multiple times where you can do something so simple as that by using this networking platform to help connect other people. I mean, I do that literally on a daily basis, just trying to connect other people one to another. So I think that's one, it's not a specific story, but it is something that I think everyone can do and should do to make connections, like try to introduce people and don't think about, oh, what am I going to get out of it? What am I going to, maybe I'll get a commission for this. Maybe I'll get something. No, just see how you can help someone else.
LinkedIn is an incredible platform. When did you start LinkedIn?
So I started like actively involved in posting pretty regularly, almost on a daily basis, close to 3 years ago.
Oh, wow.
So I think, it's close to 3 years ago at this point. I just found it. I saw other people doing it. And I was like, hey, if they're doing it, I can do it also. And I immediately started getting traction, getting business directly from it. And so I was like, oh, well, this is amazing. Let's just keep doing it, put more into it, the more I'm getting out of it. And so I've followed people who are in the marketing world because I find that social media is an incredible place to market yourself. It's an incredible place to, to kind of do that business to business networking that especially nowadays, you can't travel everywhere. And for me, that I'm living across the ocean, right? You can't necessarily go face-to-face meetings every day or every week with people, which I would love to, but here's an opportunity to actually connect with those people all over the world. And it's become such an acceptable form of business that it just fits perfectly.
So you're talking about giving, and LinkedIn is that one platform that I find, because I was on other platforms before. I'm not really as active on those as I am on LinkedIn. LinkedIn, I find that people are there to help you. People are not there just to make a buck off of you. They really genuinely want to help me. People message me, I have this amazing person for you to interview, this amazing person for you to interview. People are sharing my podcast without me even asking them. If I do it on other platforms, I would have to beg someone to share it. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So is that how you feel as well? Since you're such a giver, you feel that LinkedIn really is such a good place. I really, really personally enjoy it.
Absolutely. There's a certain extent of kind of you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. But people are very willing to do it. And I think that's the point you're making, is that people are much more open to that because they realize that business is really about networking. It's about, who you know, how you interact with them, and the openness of the people. And I have a very, very vast, wide network, well beyond the kind of Jewish community of New York, which, I think is not unique, but it's something that you really need to do and you have the opportunity to do, and kind of just branch out there and get yourself in front of the right people. It's tremendous.
It is. I want to talk about your own podcast. I know that you have a show as well. When did you start this podcast? What is it called? What is it about? Who do you focus on? Who do you interview?
So it's called the Weiss Advice Podcast. And I started it about 6 months ago, officially. And it started because I was have been a guest on, at that point, close to 100 podcasts, at this point, over 150 podcasts. And what I found is I really enjoy these kind of conversations. I love talking to people. I love having this kind of interaction, even though, we're on Zoom and, we're not sitting in the same room there. That'd be a lot of fun. I've done some personal interviews also in person, but what I found is that it's just a lot of fun, and it's podcasting in general I'm very supportive of. I think it's a huge medium, like an incredible medium to be able to put yourself out there, right? A great medium to be able to connect with the right people. It's a great medium to be able to, interview people who you actually want to do business with.
Mm-hmm.
You can kind of suck up to them in a way by, hey, would you like to be on my podcast? And they get their own exposure through that. You're helping them at the same time you're adding value to your
Right.
audience. So because I had an already kind of big existing audience and following through LinkedIn
Mm-hmm.
for the past couple of years, I was like, okay, let's just do this. This would be great. But I didn't really know what the podcast was going to be about, because it's one thing to
Right.
have this audience. It's another thing to enjoy podcasting as a guest,
Mm-hmm.
but at the same, and as a teacher, kind of the interviewing process and asking those questions, I think I enjoy a lot. But then, well, what's it about, right? So that was a little
Right.
difficult to kind of figure out what it was. And then I decided I'm just gonna have open conversations, and hopefully it'll be a way to just get to know people in a
Mm-hmm.
way that, similar to what we're doing here, but
Yeah.
get to know people who may be interviewed on many other podcasts, may be out there in the business world and are successful people, but may not really know, what's really going on with them, what they're really all about. And when you have an
Yeah.
unscripted conversation, things come out that you've never heard before, right? Or no one's ever heard before. And it's just
Right.
recording a conversation. And I think with those people who are people that I think others would like to listen to, it's a great opportunity. So that's what I did. It's mostly focused, I'd say 90% or more, or it's very real estate focused, meaning those
Mm-hmm.
people that I interview are people who are in the real estate business, right? They're in the
Mm-hmm.
industry, and they're probably well known in the industry. And I just have an opportunity to kind of interview them like a talk show in a way, where you're just
Yeah.
getting to know them, just talking, having a conversation, similarly like what we're doing here.
Exactly. That's the beauty of podcasting. It's a conversation that's recorded. You have a real conversation. That's what my show is all about. It's about being real, finding out who the person is. I always tell people, like, before I interview them, I say, I'm focusing on who you are as a person, not as what you do, not as what your name is. Who are you? Who is Yonah Weiss? That's what I focus on. Before we go, I want to ask you if you can please share some thoughts of wisdom that you've really been inspired by and has helped you out through your life. If you could share that with us and our listeners, that would be really incredible.
One of the biggest things that I live with daily is that, obviously our sages teach us tons of valuable lessons, and living, immersed in that in the Torah for so many years, it's just
Mm-hmm.
become part of me. And how you think. Uh, I don't like so much all the conventional wisdom that's out there in the world today, all these books, these self-help books, and all these things, because I feel like everything, whenever I've read any of those, having learned the Torah and gone through so much of it in such depth, it's all there. It's literally all there. I know it sounds like cliche. You heard your Rebbe say that. You heard someone say it. Everything's in the Torah. But really, when you've gone through the Torah and you really understand it, and have been around people who do, and then you read some of this other stuff, right? The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. It's a great book, right? But it's
Mm-hmm.
all from the Torah. Literally, like everything that's in that book is in Sefer Tanya. Like everything. Okay, there's nothing new. There's no chidushim for me. But and all the other books out there. So for me, I always go back to the Torah. I always go back to our sages, what they teach us. And so one thing that it says, Ezu chacham halom mikol adam, right? Who's a wise person? What's wisdom, right? You're looking for
Mm-hmm.
wisdom. You're asking something wisdom that you take with. Well, who is a wise person? What is it? It's someone who learns from everyone. It's when you can
Wow.
get beyond yourself, right? To think, oh, I
Mm-hmm.
can't listen to advice from him or her, uh, my kid, right? Or
Right.
my coworker, or my competition, or my, or this or that, or the neighbor, or the guy in the shul that I can't stand. I can't listen to that. No, you have to actually, if you want wisdom, you have to be willing to learn from everyone. Now,
Right.
sometimes what you're going to learn from some people is what not to do, right? Or
That's
how
true.
not to think, or how not to act, right?
Right. For sure.
But you have to have that humility to actually be able to be open to learning from everyone.
When you talk about learning from everyone, you don't mean that you should have 5, 6, 7, 10 mentors. You mean that your eyes should be open to actually seeing what can I learn from what's going on in front of me, from the people.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And not just people, but literally every situation, right? Everything that we do in life, everything that happens to us or everything that we experience is a learning experience, something to learn from that. And this is a great quote. Someone pointed out to me this. It says, fail, right? Failure is, some people think of failure as just a learning experience. So fail is actually that acronym, right? FAIL is first attempt in learning. Okay. When you fail, you make a mistake. It's not something that should be a setback. You can actually take that and move forward with that, because you realize it's just a learning experience. Everything in life is there to learn from.
Wow. Well, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate you taking your time to sit down with me today.
Anytime. Yeah. No, this has been fun. Thanks so much.
It's been really fun. Well, you just listened to the 38th episode of Hebrew Hits. I'm your host, Malya. That was Yonah Weiss. He is the Cost Segregation Expert. How can they get in touch with you if they want to ask you any questions?
You can find me on LinkedIn. That's actually the quickest response you'll get from me, or you can go to yonahweiss.com.
Okay, you heard it from Yonah Weiss, yonahweiss.com, and you can go follow him and DM him on LinkedIn. Please go follow Hebrew Hits Radio on YouTube. Push the subscribe button, share, like, and follow, and go follow at Hebrew_Hits on all your favorite social medias, which is Instagram, Facebook. I'm also available on LinkedIn, and go follow Hebrew Hits on all your favorite streaming apps. Thank you so much for being here. We'll be back next week, same time, same place.